to A Lighthouse in the Dark. Today we have a speaking coach who literally helps the leaders whose words shape the world we live in. She's helped people from Google, from Amazon, from LinkedIn, IBM. Pretty much anybody of note and character has learned a thing or two, and today we're going to learn something from Nausheen I. Chen. Welcome to A Lighthouse in the Dark.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me here, and thank you for that fantastic intro.
Yeah, I'm so excited because I've been diving through so much of your content. Public speaking is most people's biggest fear, statistically, and yet you and I do a lot of it and love it. What made you love public speaking?
So I was adopted, which is not the story here. I was adopted by my parents later in their lives, which meant that my entire family was much older than me. So I was the youngest by far. And so my opinion never mattered. I always had a problem with that. So even at that age where I didn't even know what I had to say, I just knew I want people to hear my voice. I want to be counted. And I started performing these crappy little poems for the family, right? I started writing all kinds of stuff and performing, and I suddenly realized the power of the spotlight. As soon as I would start performing, everyone would shush, and they would actually listen to me, and I would actually have their attention. The one thing that I really desperately wanted. And so really from that time, I've been in love with the spotlight, and I sought out every single stage I could find. When I had my first corporate job at Procter & Gamble, I became a communication skills trainer. Had nothing to do with my job, but I was actually one of the youngest communication skills trainers in the company at the time, training people twice my age on communication skills. Loved it. Since then, I have spoken at storytelling events, at coffee shops, given workshops for every single thing that I learned I wanted to teach, and been on multiple TEDx stages. And so I've just realized that so many people shy away from the spotlight. They shy away from being visible, but there's so much power in claiming your spot in the spotlight and understanding how to make the most of it. And that's been my journey, and that's why I teach that to people now, where the journey is helping them go from being terrified of being visible, saying no to speaking opportunities, saying I can't do it, to actually understanding that, wow, if I can tame the nerves, if I can tap into my confidence, if I have the right tools to be articulate and concise and clear in the moment, then I can be unstoppable. That's the belief that my clients have with me by the end of this journey.
See, I love that. As somebody who, I coached sports primarily for 26 years, but I've done coaching throughout my life. There's something beautiful about helping somebody unlock that kind of magic in them and help them find that. And I can see your eyes light up when you talk about it. What is the best part of that for you?
Helping people realize that they have a story to tell. I work with these incredible people, young, ambitious managers at Google who are non-native English speakers who want to be an exec one day, but then they feel shy, they feel inhibited, they feel oh my God, all eyes are on me, everyone's gonna judge me. And then making that shift, that is the beautiful part. And I have them come, usually this happens somewhere around 5, 6, 7 weeks into working together. So it doesn't take very long, which is also a surprise for them. But somewhere around week 6, week 7, I see this light bulb moment. I see this point where they say, wow, Nausheen, I had no idea, but I actually felt good that time that I spoke. I actually don't mind watching myself back. I used to find it cringe just 3 weeks ago, and now I'm okay with it. And Nausheen, I got unsolicited positive feedback from people saying that, wow, you've changed something in the way you're showing up. There's something different. And so when you see that, you realize it's nothing new. It's not like I planted something new. I just helped them be unapologetic about their voice and really understand that confidence is something they can build. It's not something that's natural or something that someone's going to hand them on a platter. And when they realize that, that's when they really step into the spotlight, right, with ownership.
Yeah, I want to talk about confidence for a minute because this is one of your areas of expertise. It's something you've literally done TED Talks on. Confidence is hard for a lot of people, especially in a speaking realm. And you said something that I hadn't really considered, which is a lot of people in tech, English is a second language or a third language. My dad is an immigrant, so I watched that throughout my childhood because my dad and my grandparents, while English was their primarily work language here, it was not their primary language. And I watched the way that creates discomfort and can erode some confidence. English is a tougher language than people realize, especially because we use a lot of slang and like we're very playful and we break every rule that there is in English. Every time we make a rule, it's why I think young kids get very confused. But the idea of finding your confidence and understanding not only let it be a language barrier, but to use it to your advantage in confidence, I think is amazing. Talk to us about confidence.
So I really did a deep dive into confidence, primarily for the TEDx talk, but also to understand myself better, to understand, well, what are the areas that I'm confident in, what are the areas that I lack confidence in. And so I came across this study by Albert Bandura, who's a professor at Stanford. And he was curious about the same question. Unfortunately, he's a scientist, so he did an actual experiment on this. He studied people who self-reported as either having confidence or not having confidence. And to simplify the results, let's imagine that there's confident Kathy, who's very confident, and then there's insecure Ian, who's not that confident. And imagine that they're playing a game of Scrabble. Now, they're both getting awful letters. They're getting Z's and Q's and W's. And they're both losing. They're not able to actually get a good score. Insecure Ian says, oh, that was awful luck. Oh, I just can't catch a break. Oh, that was just, I just don't understand why my luck is so bad. Confident Kathy says, okay, I'll try to do better next time. It's on me. I'm going to do better. I'm going to try. And now, what if they're winning? Would you imagine that insecure Ian's now finally happy if he's actually winning at this game?
Well, you would hope, but probably not. He's probably still complaining about the letters. Although I'm thinking in a Scrabble analogy, I'm like, Z's and Q's are worth the most points. I'm like, the opportunity, like, right? I can make 10s. I can use them for 10 apiece, right? So like, but that also goes to the confidence factor, right?
Yes.
Is I look at that as like, oh, this is an opportunity. I just have to think outside the box, right?
Yeah.
Whereas somebody who's insecure goes, oh, I got saddled with this terrible restriction.
I got saddled. So if insecure Ian is actually winning, he doesn't take credit for it. He says, that was pure dumb luck. Just luck. I have no control over it. Might not happen again. Confident Kathy says, yeah, that was me. I did that. I won. And so the result of the experiment is that the difference between someone who is confident and someone who lacks confidence is the way they speak to themselves. The ownership, the control that they exert over their environment and how they refuse to let the environment control their confidence. And so I always tell my clients, confidence is just another word for being in control. And you're always in control. Even when you feel like you aren't, you really are.
Yeah, and also there's an element of confidence that I've heard you talk about. I heard you say one time, because you're dealing with really smart people who have a lot of information. And one of the things that I heard you say was that people kind of get paralyzed by their information because they want to give it to everybody in the audience. I think you did a video one time where somebody was pouring water in a glass and overflowed the glass because they were just trying to pour all the information in. And I think people do that is they're like, I got to get everything I know out because that's how I prove that I'm competent and that I have confidence. And what really ends up happening is they become monotone, they become robotic, they try to follow a line, but it's hard to convey everything. And it kind of undermines that confidence, I think, at times, right? Is that something you share with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're feeling nervous, when you're feeling like, I don't quite know if I can handle this, you generally feel one of three things physiologically. You have a fight, flight, or freeze response, right, which you're very familiar with. And in terms of speaking, fight is rambling. It's like, I'm gonna fight this feeling. I'm gonna make sure that I get as much information out as possible. I'm gonna just overcompensate for my nerves by over-explaining. Flight is, I want to get this over with as soon as I possibly can.
Yes.
Right.
Listen, I love this because no one has ever said this way, but it makes perfect sense. Keep going.
Yeah. And then freeze is, as you would expect, freezing, just going blank, just feeling like, oh no, all the words have left my brain. I don't know what to say. And I'm talking about it in a lighthearted manner, but I've actually worked with clients who were so petrified that they have run off the stage feeling humiliated, but they couldn't get a word out. So it's very real, this extreme stage fright where you just freeze up. So those are the three basic responses, and you could experience one or multiple of them. And that's what happens when you don't have your nerves intentionally under control, when you're not making your nerves work for you.
Okay, give us an example of that. How do you get people to have their nerves work for them?
The work starts before you step onto a stage, before you start that big presentation or keynote. The work starts when you start challenging the stories in your brain. That's where it starts from. I help clients understand what are some limiting beliefs that you're holding on to that are not serving you, that are making you feel even more scared, even more nervous. Sometimes it's, the audience is going to judge me. I'm going to disappoint them. Sometimes it's an imposter syndrome. I don't know if I deserve to be here. Maybe someone else should be here who's more qualified than me. Whatever it is, it's potentially a limiting belief that is blocking your confidence. It's standing in the way between you being able to control the nerves. So exerting control over the nerves is about reframing the belief. When I got one of my first paid workshops as a public speaking coach, so I had been speaking on stages for about 17 years by this time, but I was a new public speaking coach. I had just made the pivot. And I had Twitch, which was a huge company, hire me as a trainer for their female engineers. Big deal. I was thrilled for about 5 seconds.
And then the reality sets in, right?
Then I just felt dread.
Yeah.
I was just like, what did I just do? What did I just sign up for? They're going to be disappointed. They've hired the wrong person. I don't know. What if they just feel like I'm not able to help them? And I was sitting on the couch a few days before the workshop, just feeling more and more dread. And my husband turns to me and says, Nausheen, what do you tell your clients when they feel this nervous or this scared? And I said, good question. I asked them to reframe their nerves. And he said, do that for yourself. And I marched myself into the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, and reframed my nerves to excitement. And this actually links back to how the body produces the same reaction, whether you're nervous or excited. Mm-hmm. So the brain can label that emotion. The brain can say, I'm not nervous. I am really excited that I get this opportunity to go and train these female engineers. Because of me, someone's going to have a great presentation. Because of me, someone's going to walk away knowledge rich. Because of me, someone might get promoted. I might have the power to change someone's life. How incredible is that? The reason why I'm feeling this way is because I care about the results. So now I've reframed something that was negative into something that's positive. Now I'm looking forward to the opportunity. It's still a big opportunity. I haven't decreased the stakes, but I've made myself look forward to it and get excited about it. And that's how you make the nerves work for you instead of against you.
Yeah, as a coach, it resonates with me because that's what I taught players for 26 years, which is it's amazing that people's first response is there's something wrong with me or that there's a problem and I got to get out of here, right? And the reality is I don't ever want you to do anything you don't care about. That's adrenaline in your body getting ready to move faster, see better, be in your optimal state for success if you look at it as an opportunity and excitement versus it being anxiety or just terrifying, and you feed that and you define what that is for you. And I think it's such an interesting thing because we tend to go with the initial feeling or the initial fear as opposed to settling into it, because I don't want anybody to take a stage who doesn't have a level of like excitement.
Yes.
Like as an actor, I don't ever want to go out on stage where I don't feel anything, because if I don't feel anything, I don't care.
Yeah, you're
and
indifferent.
Everything I do, I want to be filled with passion, and I want to be a storyteller, and I want to move people. You don't move people being monotone and disinterested. Tell me about how people get out of being monotone if they're structurally used to kind of having a low level of energy and or if they've been prone to be very serious in their structure. How do you get them to loosen up and share themselves authentically?
I work with clients on what I call the speaker's toolkit. Your voice is absolutely your most powerful weapon. You know that. I know that. A lot of people don't know that. Like you mentioned, people are conditioned to speak in a monotone because we get lazy. In the business world, people are actually used to very average or poor communicators.
Right.
Just sad but true.
It's true.
So a lot of people just mimic the voice that they heard, the voices they hear around them, which means that they're also monotone and they also don't use the entire vocal range that they're actually capable of. So the very first thing is I help people understand what is the voice actually made of. We look at the voice in terms of the 5B framework, where we look at your pitch, your pacing, your pauses, your projection, your pronunciation/enunciation. That's where people start understanding that the voice is just an instrument. It's a tool. It's something you can play with, and you can actually train yourself to change the way that you sound, to use more of your vocal range. Typically, let's say I have clients record an exercise where they're answering a question that they get asked all the time. We play it back, and then I have them redo parts of it, and I say, now, what words do you really want people to understand? I want you to highlight them. Where do you want people to feel a little bit of intensity? Let's go faster over there. Where do you want to create a little bit of drama or curiosity? Let's go slower. Let's add pauses. The moment they redo a part of their exercise, just adding in those vocal variations, they're like, wow, that was different. And they feel different. They don't even need an audience at that point. Because I asked them, how did that go? And they said, wow, Nausheen, I can hear the difference in the way that lands. And then from that point, it's just about practice. So the first step is unlocking that understanding that, wow, you have a powerful tool that you are not utilizing to its maximum potential. And the second piece is, of course, practicing so that you can internalize it. Because, of course, in the beginning, it's breaking down many, many, many decades of conditioning. So it's hard work just thinking of like, okay, I should pause now. Oh, I should raise my pitch. Oh, I should go deeper. So it's intentional, it's a little frustrating because you have to really think about your message and think about your delivery. But then the more you practice it, you internalize it. And now you're suddenly a more powerful speaker.
There's a joy. No one has to tell you when you get it right. You can feel it. And I think that's something that people forget about until they have the experience. But also the understanding that time gets kind of twisted when you're on stage by yourself. And people get real worried about taking a pause because every pause seems like it's a million years, right? Like, and people are like, oh, I was up there forever. It's like, no, you were only up there for a couple minutes. But if you talk about something that you're really excited about, you can go for 20, 30, 40 minutes and really have people riveted. And it goes incredibly fast and it feels like 5 minutes. The difference is if you don't bring that energy, it will feel like 30 or 40 minutes. And time shifts in that way. And any good performer, any good speaker knows that feeling. But learning that you can slow down and sit and celebrate the moment. Because until you realize that, there's a clock in your head that's like racing, because it's usually that inner critic that is evaluating you. Talk about the inner critic, because this is something that you work on a lot, right? That voice in your head. Where do you kind of view that inner critic, and how do you deal with it?
So we're in LA, and this is the perfect time to bring up this analogy. I actually teach this analogy all the way in France, right? But this is the perfect place. So there are actually multiple voices in your head. Now imagine a film set, which you're very familiar with.
Yeah.
The three principal roles on a film set are the scriptwriter, who comes up with the words, the performer, who has to perform the words, and the director, who evaluates the performance. Now imagine that the scriptwriter has the entire message written out, and then they give it to the performer. The performer starts feeling it out, reading out the words, rehearsing. Then the scriptwriter comes and taps them on the shoulder and says, wait, don't say it this way, say it this way. Wait, that joke doesn't work, try this other joke. Wait, no, that word doesn't quite work. And now as the performer is trying to incorporate their suggestions, the director keeps calling, cut, that was awful.
This sounds like my whole life in childhood, to be very honest with you, Nausheen. This sounds like I'm having a moment of both joy and anxiety sitting across from you, because add in a few executive producers and one network person, and you got a real adventure.
Adventure is a great word. So the director keeps saying, whoa, what are you doing? Where did you even learn to act? Oh, that was awful. Oh, that was so bad. Now, the performer in this scenario, is there any possibility that they can give the best performance of their lives?
No, but I'm going to promise to everyone who's watching, I did not talk about any particular director I worked. This is a purely theoretical disclaimer. I did not know this example was coming up.
So we are our own scriptwriters,
yes,
our own performers, and our own inner critics, our own directors. When you constantly overthink your message, when you're doubting yourself, you have false starts. You say, I want to tell you, no, actually, I wanted to share. Actually, that's when the scriptwriter is interrupting you. When you're constantly judging yourself. Oh, I was so bad. Oh, that was awful. Why did I use that word? Why didn't I say this? You're constantly calling cut. You're that constant director who's not letting the performer perform. Now, what would be the ideal scenario? So in this situation, how can the performer actually deliver their best performance? What do the scriptwriter and director need to do?
They need to get out of the way.
Yes.
Yeah, let them do what they're going to do, and if you have notes after,
yes,
we can change it on the next take, right?
Yeah.
Like please don't do it mid-take, right? It's like asking anybody to do anything middle of action is a nightmare.
And yet, we do it to ourselves.
All the time. All of us.
Especially when you're under pressure, because the stakes are high. So the goal is to train yourself to shush the voices. Just put them on pause. They don't need to go away, because of course you need the scriptwriter. Of course you need the inner critic. The inner critic is what pushes you to be better and better. You don't want to get rid of that voice. You just want that voice to be on pause, on mute, when you're in the moment, so that you can be fully 1,000% present. And that's the only way to bring confidence, control, and authority in the moment.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, well, first of all, my inner critic, I usually try to tie him up and throw him in a closet somewhere in the back of my head. I try really hard, especially as a performer, because man, is he loud. And I always ask people, who does your inner critic sound like? Because more often than not, it doesn't sound like our voice. It sounds like a parent, a teacher, whoever was hypercritical of you early in life, who makes you question, right? And I think that's an important point that people need to remember is sometimes it's the programming you already had and you're already prejudging yourself, and that critic is loud and you need to let that go. So if you can kind of tie them up for a little while, go through a take, do your thing. But I would also say as a performer, and I'd be interested as a speaker, some of my best work happens when I can't really remember all the beats of what just happened. Where I just go and you kind of get in, for lack of a better term, in a flow state. And you play with the audience and you're interacting with the space or the other character or whatever's happening in the world. And you ride the wave of energy. Like as a speaker, sometimes you just get in that rhythm and you can hear people react and you know when to slow down because you can feel the room. So then you know when to speed up and feed it energy, and you can play with that energy and ride the wave. Is that the same for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of my talks are conversations. That's the only way I know how to work with a live audience. I bring in some of my improv background. I bring in a little bit of a stand-up flavor. So I'm like talking to the audience, but also picking out people and saying, oh, he gets it. Ah, she looks confused. Oh, that was great. Thank you for giving me that reassurance. And people love it because they're not expecting it. Because these are serious presentations at serious events that are very tech focused or very business focused. But I bring in that flavor of, hey, I'm not here to lecture you. I'm not here to just download information into your brain. I am really interested in having a conversation with you. And so what if there are 100 or 1,000 of you? I can still have a conversation with all of you. It's possible, and that's what gives me that energy. So 100%, that's what I live for when I'm on that stage. That's what makes me feel comfortable, like I'm home. I never feel awkward when I know that people are there with me. It's not like all eyes are on me. It's like, oh wow, everyone's here. Let's have a conversation. This is awesome. Let's have a party. Let's have fun. And let me also teach you the things I know as we go along.
Well, and I'm going to talk about confidence for a minute. And I believe I heard you say this, and this is something that I've believed for a long time, which is to get the focus outside of you and really focus on what you can give or help other people with. Because I think anytime, if you really want to reach people, it comes from sharing. And the more you're trying to help other people, the much more beneficial it is for everyone involved, and the more successful you're going to be as a performer, as a speaker. And I also think your confidence grows because you know you're offering and you're bringing value to people.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the limiting beliefs that you've reframed right there. The limiting belief is, oh my God, they're going to judge me. And you reframe that to, they're just here to learn. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to impress them. I just need to share what I know. And now suddenly the focus is on them and not on you. And that's a great way to dissipate that tension and stress and focus on the easy stuff. Every single expert loves talking about what they are an expert in. That's all you need to do when you're up on that stage.
Well, and people walk in because they want to hear something from you and about you. So the more you bring your authentic portion of you, if I go up there and I'm really, really dry, that's not who I am on a day-to-day basis. I have to be playful and joke around, as I did earlier. But also there's an element of like, my experience is unique to me. If I don't share me, then there was no point in them coming and listening to me, right? Like that's the beginning of it. I'm interested for you. Let's talk about you like as the person for a second, Nausheen.
Sure.
Like what lights you up outside of speaking? What lights you up that kind of works its way into everything else you do?
Oof. Meaningful conversations. I don't have a lot of family. I don't have kids. I have a few very close friends who are family to me. And so having meaningful conversations about life, the universe, and everything, that's what's always lit me up, where you're really going into a conversation without censoring yourself, without limiting yourself. It goes back to how I'm very much a chameleon. I feel like you are as well, right? So we adapt. And that's great. That's a skill.
And I've had to.
You have to.
Right.
And then you rise to that occasion. And it's great. As a skill set, absolutely fantastic. But for you, there are very few people. I bet this is true for you as well. There are very few people with whom you can be fully yourself, where you can really just let loose and talk to them about anything. Nothing is taboo. That's what lights me up. And of course, I understand, especially now as I become more and more visible, as I grow my community more and more, there are things that I talk about publicly, and there are things that you will never hear me talk about publicly. I will never talk about religion or politics or anything super polarizing, because that's just not the public persona that I have. So again, the conversations I can have with my very close friends are the moments that I cherish a lot. So just one conversation is enough to light me up for a long time.
Interesting. Talk to me a moment about personas. Because I think especially if you represent a company, right? Like people know you're coming out as, say you want to, I don't want to use a name of a brand because then it might change the way we shape this conversation. Do you encourage people to build who they're going to be on stage, or do you ask them to try and take down those walls and be as much authentically them on stage?
We challenge the idea of authenticity.
Okay.
First of all,
good. Let's have that conversation.
Because a lot of people use being authentic as an excuse to never change, to never explore other aspects of their personality,
right.
Especially shy, introverted clients that I've worked with who say, Nausheen, I'm naturally quiet. I don't want to be a loud-mouthed extrovert. And they think that being powerful on stage demands that change in their personality, which is absolutely not true. But what's also not true is that they have one authentic self. That's simply not true. Okay. We're different people. You just have to acknowledge that. We are different with our families. We're different with our friends. We're different with our colleagues, with our work people. We're different with our clients. We're different with strangers, with Uber drivers. We have different aspects of our personality that come out naturally in different scenarios. So this is just about taking command, taking control of that aspect, and letting yourself craft a public persona that you want to showcase. And especially for my introverted clients, I help them understand that all I want is I want your passion for your subject to just bubble up to the surface, to rise to the surface. I want you to show us how you feel about this thing that you're passionate about. Because right now, it's getting lost in the middle of all of this shyness and timidness. So we don't want to stick to one version of ourselves just because we think that's what's authentically me. We want to bring out authenticity by shaping how we're presenting ourselves in different scenarios. And they're all us, different flavors of us, but we are now in control.
It's fascinating because authenticity, when used right, is a beautiful thing. But I'm realizing from the way you said it is how many people use it to hide or to stay in the familiar and the comfortable. Mm-hmm. I think I heard you talk one time about volume. Mm-hmm. And like, I know there's people who are listening to this thinking, oh, they just want us to like be on 10 all the time and just be the highest version of themselves, right? Which is kind of an oversimplification. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the persona that people get, especially people who are naturally a little more reserved. No one's asking you to be on 10. Nobody wants to listen to people screaming at the top of their lungs. Mm-hmm. I think I heard you say one time, turn it up to like a 6 or 7, right? Mm-hmm. And know when to go to 8 or 9 and when to come back down.
Yes, I help people calibrate themselves because they've never thought of it that way. I have someone, for example, do a little bit of an intro. And then I ask them, okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10 of energy, I call it energy. And it's a vague term, but it absolutely makes sense in this context. So I tell them, on a scale of 1 to 10 of energy, with 1 being the least amount of energetic and 10 being super energetic, that you're overwhelming the room.
1 being Eeyore, 10 being like Robin Williams.
Sure. Yes. Where would you rate yourself? Right. Very often people say, okay, that was like a 3 or a 4. And I tell them, yeah, I agree. Now, if that was a 3 or a 4, just show me, what does a 5 look like? Just taking it up 1 notch. And then they try again. And then I ask them, okay, now what does a 7 look like? And then they go up 2 notches. And I help them understand, look, you were able to bring different levels of energy just when prompted, which means you're capable of this. You just need to be intentional about it. So when you're on stage, when you're on camera, when you really want to make an impact, you have to bring energy that's just 1 or 2 notches above your regular everyday energy. You can't bring the same energy to a stage as the energy that you have when you're checking your email. Just doesn't work because the audience, they either try to rise and match your level of energy, or then they sink to your lack of energy and indifference and they start checking their email.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was just thinking that's when people in the crowd start checking their own email and checking out.
Yep.
And then that's the other part is that's when people start to leave, which is for a lot of people the worst feeling as a speaker is when you see people get up and start to move, but you don't always know why they're leaving. Don't tell yourself some horrible, this goes back to the inner critic, like don't make up a story in your head of like, you're terrible, it's terrible. Feed energy to it and then get back to something that you're passionate about and see if you can reconnect with people. But there's a portion where some people are not for whatever it is that we're sharing sometimes. Doesn't mean we can't still be engaging and reach people though. Okay, I'm fascinated to know when you think about public speaking, what is the thing that like literally you cannot wait to do or you cannot wait to tell people after? What's the bar for you where you're like, I want this moment or I'm seeking this in a conversation?
Ex-President Obama once talked about this feeling of electricity in that exchange between you and the audience where you say something and they respond, then you respond, then they respond. It's that feeling. It's that electricity that for me makes the entire thing worth it. It's when every single person in the audience feels like I'm having a one-on-one conversation with them. When they're responding to a joke, when they're cringing at something, when they give me a little bit of a reaction, when I ask, well, was that good? No. Did you like that? Yes.
Sometimes you want the kind of negative reaction, which I also think is something that people shy away from. I used to talk about, because we used to film in front of a live audience, sometimes you tell a joke that's funny to all of us who have been in the building all week because we're so much closer. It's an inside joke, so we can be harsher with each other. But the audience would be like, oh, which wasn't always a terrible response, right? And it's very interesting because we would have the moment where it's like, okay, do we like that response? Because sometimes that followed by something that's really funny, that gap is actually more powerful.
Yeah.
Or did we bring down the energy too much and do we need to look at the words we used for the next take, right? Like, do we need to look at the words we used or do we need to soften that to reach them in a different way? Or do we have to find a way to make that funny? Like, as a person presenting it, do I need to put energy in a different place and emphasize a different part of this to lead people more to the humor side as opposed to the reaction side? But sometimes that dark reaction is a really beautiful thing. And you realize, well, we moved people, right?
Yeah.
And the more you're moving people, it's all success. So you can't let the inner critic again kind of chew you up because you didn't necessarily get the initial reaction you thought, because sometimes a really powerful semi-negative reaction sets up the greatest joyful reaction later.
Absolutely. And I set that up. So for me, it's actually taking the audience on a journey from showing them what does bad communication look like to what does powerful communication look like. So very often I'll actually do a false intro, false entrance onto the stage. So when someone introduces me, I kind of stumble onto the stage, walk really fast, and then I say, hi, I'm Nausheen, I'm a public speaking coach. And then I see them kind of trying to figure out what's happening. And then I look at them and I say, was that impressive? And they say, no. Then I say, now watch this.
Right.
And then I walk with confidence and I share my story. And then they're like, oh. And I tell them, that's what I want you to do. I want you to first understand, what are you doing? That's not creating the impression that you want.
Right.
I want you to understand that other people are reacting the same way that you reacted to me.
Yes.
And now I want you to see what a difference great communication skills can make in terms of that first impression. So I thrive on it. I want people to react that way.
Talk about first impressions. Because that's such a big moment. And I think a lot of times people come, especially to a big moment, they wade into the water in the shallow end when you really need to just come dive into the pool. And like, I'm not asking everybody to do a cannonball and get everybody wet, but like, you better come out with some energy. There has to be, you should be coming out, because wading in almost never works unless it's a setup.
The first impression is really about setting the tone for the entire talk or the entire presentation. As we said, a lot of communicators are average. very often the presentations that we sit through are boring.
Yeah, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but yes, especially because I go to a lot of meetings. I'm sure you go to a lot of meetings and presentations, and there's a lot of. And the crazy part is, you can have the most beautiful conversation with the person right before, and they're funny and charming and like engaging, and you're like, great, I can't wait to hear them speak. And then they get up on stage and say, so I'm here to share with you about. Yeah. And then they're like, you're like, no. Like,
it's like it's not even them anymore.
It's like, where did you go? Because I loved the person I met.
That's why the first impression is about setting the tone for the rest of the talk. It's actually about getting that audience buy-in, right? Getting them to either say, oh yeah, this is what we were expecting. All right, another boring presentation that I have to sit through. Or them saying, wait a minute, what? This is different. Oh, this speaker is going to be interesting. Ooh, I better pay attention. That's why the first impression is so critical. And what you talked about in terms of wading in versus just kind of making a big splash, a lot of people do that because they don't warm up beforehand. They walk onto the stage, they start the presentation, they fumble their way through the first few minutes, then they find their rhythm. But the first few minutes are when they feel the most nervous, the most unsettled. So when they're talking very, very, very fast, or when they're using a lot of filler words. And that's when the audience is actually really waiting for you to talk to them. The attention is highest at the beginning and at the end of presentations.
Can you give people an example of some filler words, just so, because people have all heard them, and then also talk about how you prep, because you have beautiful ways for people to prep before they go out, and I'd love for you to share them.
Sure. Filler words are essentially what happens is when your brain needs an extra fraction of a second to come up with the next thing to say, you're putting way too much pressure on your mouth to keep on talking. So the brain isn't giving the mouth a signal. The mouth just throws out whatever it has in the buffer, which is essentially
We call it puking sound, because like in film it happens too, because people will be like, and it's like, just own the moment.
Just pause.
And just pause, right? Going back to the like inner critic and the speed at which you do things. Time is not going as fast as you think. If you just hold for a second, the brain has a chance to catch up. But if you're trying to fill it, it's like, and then you start making weird kind of guttural, it almost feels like the animal's getting hurt, like, right? Like, and people do this and you're like, oh no, it's like, and everyone in the audience can feel it. And they cringe with you and they worry for you. And then it's hard for them to be on your team. So how do you prep for that so that doesn't happen?
Yes, so in terms of preparation, I have my clients, and I work on this, of course, as well. I have my clients create what I call a positive feedback loop. So the work starts way before the presentation or keynote. The work starts first, of course, with building their confidence. Then we move on to, okay, what should you be doing in the days leading up to this high-stakes presentation or meeting? And then what should you be doing right before? Right before, you want to warm up. You want to hit that stage really pumped up, in the zone, ready to go. And so I work with clients to create a customized warm-up routine for them that really works for them. Some people just want to sing a little song or listen to their favorite jam, their favorite anthem, and then just dance out a little bit. So they're working out their vocal cords, they're doing a little bit of exercise, a little bit of cardio. So getting energized, getting in the zone. With others, I have them work on their facial expressions, because a number of my clients have a poker face. They've just been
especially
muting.
In business. Yeah, you've been told your whole career, don't show emotion, be very serious. Yeah. And they look like this.
Yep. They're talking about like, the proudest moment of my life was when my child was born. You're like, what?
Yeah. I was the happiest I've ever been. And you're like, nobody's believing that, even if it's true.
Right? There's a disconnect.
Yeah.
So I have them work on warming up their face, warming up their expressions, making sure that they're essentially sending a signal to their brain, it's time to be more expressive. Some of my clients are mumblers. With them, I work on enunciation. they get tongue twisters to say right before they need to be on stage. Can I go grab a cup of coffee in a coffee pot? Can I go grab a cup of coffee in a copper coffee pot? And then when you're there, when you're in the moment, the prep doesn't stop.
Right.
You have to sustain your energy. You can't just start here and then go down, which is very natural, right? You get tired as time goes on, especially if you're doing like a 20-minute keynote, a 30-minute keynote. And so the prep is sustaining your energy as you go along. It could be something as simple as having a bit of water or a really great beverage that's not coffee or alcohol there so that you can actually keep drinking alongside and not dehydrate yourself. It could be adding in audience engagement, which actually energizes you as you keep going. And then again, the prep actually doesn't stop even after, because we're creating a positive feedback loop, which means we want to take learnings from that time to feed into prep for the next time. This is the step that most people forget.
Yeah, because they come off stage and go, that's done. I'm done. I'm never doing that again, right?
Yeah.
Or they go, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Going back to not being very confident, right?
Yeah.
Going back to, I think it was Ian, right? Insecure Ian, where it was like,
yes.
I got lucky, and well, at least that one went okay, right? And they just drop that as if none of the prep or none of their participation was part of this process, and that they're not leading to the next one.
Yeah, exactly. So afterwards, the key is to debrief with yourself, and not just the stuff that didn't go well. Because of course that's top of mind. Yeah. Not just the critic. Because actually it's essentially the critic, but you're training the critic to also look at the good stuff.
Right.
Nothing says critics don't look at good stuff. That happens all the time in movie reviews. Like, you do talk about the good stuff.
It does?
It's
not in my...
Maybe not
just
all
kidding.
the time.
Maybe it's just because that's how we feel. No, but it is.
Yeah.
And I do think that's become harder. And I do think on social media a lot of times, there's less of that, because it feels the people who are negative are so loud.
Yeah.
I also think that people have misconstrued the critic. We used to have this concept of a critic's job was to like be constructive and evaluate, right?
Yeah.
Now we look at the critic as the person's job is to tear things apart and tell you all the things that are wrong, which is not what it is. No. It's supposed to be to take a critical analysis of it, not to criticize. Those are not the same. And I think that's a big difference, and it's something that people need to start adopting, is like, don't be the critic who criticizes. Be the person who critically analyzes all of the stuff that went on, what you loved, what joke landed, what connection did you make with the audience, where was the surprise joy that came out of this moment? Because that's the other part. Where was the part that you exceeded expectation, which I think people rarely ask.
Absolutely. And what happens is that we notice and we cling on to the negative moments because actually it goes back to survival. To survive, you need to know where danger is at.
Right.
You need to remember the bad experiences. Sadly, our brains are hardwired to notice and remember the bad stuff. We always remember the worst things that have happened to us. And that's evolution. That doesn't mean that we can't counter it. Doesn't mean that we can't condition ourselves to notice the positives. I tell my clients, imagine that your skill set is mapped out on a graph. So there's a graph, right? And imagine that you have 3 to 4 to 10 skills just kind of mapped out as bar graphs,
right,
where you're going from, let's say, for the sake of simplicity, 0 to 100, right? 100 being Einstein level at whatever skill you're at. Now imagine you're visualizing your skills mapped as these bars on this graph. And imagine that you have a line, let's say somewhere around 80%, that could qualify as expert level. So think of your skill set. Which bars are the closest to expert level? Are they things that you're bad at? Or are they things where you've already gained a level of competence?
Right.
When you look at it that way, you realize the closest you are to expert level is in things that you're already good at. If you don't even know what they are, if you don't give yourself enough credit for the competences that you've built, how can you ever get to expert level? Or if you're too busy only worried about the stuff that's at 10%, 20%, minus 5%. Of course, you want to get everything up to a healthy average, for sure. But if you ignore the stuff that's at 60%, you just have 20% left. If you apply yourself, you can get to expert level in those things. And we all have them. We just never give ourselves credit, and we never work on it intentionally.
I want to talk about online for a second, because you're doing a lot of teaching with LinkedIn.
Yes.
And online is a different skill. And we've moved to a world where people's meetings and their presentations, whether we realize it or not, in meetings, we're doing small presentations. This is defining people's entire work structure. It's defining their success. How do you coach people in that environment, and what are the things that you're seeing in an online world to help lift people?
The one challenge that people have when they're doing online meetings, especially presentations, is, Nausheen, I can't see people. I can't feed off of their energy. And so people feel demotivated, de-energized. They don't quite know how to bring impact. Typically, these are people who might be okay in that in-person environment where they can see the audience, they can feed off of their responses, they can see some friendly, smiling faces nodding at them. No such thing in an online presentation, or so they think. So I tell them, A, it's great that you know how to feed off of people's energy when you're seeing them. Let's see how we can transfer that into the online environment. The very first thing is the simplest, which a lot of people skip. Ask people to turn their cameras on. More and more folks are just okay with people having their cameras off. They're too polite, or they don't want to bother people. I ask people at the beginning of every single coaching session, teaching session, workshop, I ask them, I would love to see you. If you're camera ready, if you feel that you can turn the camera on, please turn your cameras on. I want to see as many of you as possible. And just that one prompt gets people to turn, gets at least 80%. There'll always be a 20% that won't turn it on, which is fine. At least 80% of the audience now has their cameras on. Now they're looking at you. Great. So that's a great first step.
I've also found with young people, a lot of young people who went to school in the last 10 or 15 years were in education environments where they were told to turn their camera off to not be a distraction. So up-and-coming workers start with it off as a baseline. And so a lot of young people are not used to being on camera. And so when we were working in tech and doing a bunch of stuff, I found when you asked them, all of a sudden they would come online, and I started asking people, they're like, oh, you're supposed to start off camera. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting generational difference, because we kind of start on camera. It was like the standard.
Yeah.
But we didn't grow up with everything being on camera, which I found fascinating.
But we, I believe, start with the camera on because we want to recreate that in-person one-on-one conversation feel. I mean, it'd be weird if we were both hiding behind this table.
Yes.
And talking to each other.
It probably wouldn't be a whole lot of interest for everybody else either. Yeah, it would be a very strange.
Or like, you're in this room and I'm in the other. We're just yelling across.
Yes.
So that idea is so unnatural to us. We want to recreate that feeling. And so, of course, we turn our cameras on. But it's a very interesting note that you're making here, because I've actually observed the opposite.
Oh, interesting.
A lot of Gen Z entrepreneurs and founders that I work with now, given this is a bit of an exception, they're outliers because they are founders and entrepreneurs, but they're very comfortable on camera. They're used to documenting their lives. They're used to putting stories on Instagram. They're used to creating reels. It's very natural for them. But the moment you put them on a stage, they feel unnatural.
Interesting.
They feel like, whoa, what's up with all these people looking at me?
Oh, because they're so used to doing it through a camera but not having actual feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
They feel the weight of expectation. They feel like, oh no, I can't mess up. I can't do a retake.
Right.
I can't have my editor crop this out. I need to be perfect. Oh no. And so I've actually worked with some brilliant Gen Z founders, Lara Costa, Ruben Hassi, I don't know if you're familiar with them, who had a bit of that perfectionist complex where they felt like, Nausheen, the way I present myself in person, live, needs to be as polished and as refined as my online brand. And right now it's not. I don't want to disappoint people when they actually meet me in person. And so that has been the training, taking the confidence, eloquence, articulation that they learned speaking on camera, transferring that skill set to that live environment. So very interesting. I've had the opposite experience, specifically with Gen Z entrepreneurs.
It's interesting. I wonder if it's the high achieving CEO types who are so used to having to be on camera and recording everything versus a lot of like up and coming entry level. Because I'm like a lot of like college students I've noticed come offline, and you're almost like, are you there? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm here, and they're paying attention. And it's interesting in meetings because I've watched some of them take just a ridiculous amount of notes, which is also a thing. I was like, oh, and one told me recently, I don't like to be on camera because you only see the top of my head, and people think I'm not listening. And I'm like, okay. I said, well, what were you doing? I was taking notes. And I was like,
slow your camera.
Right. Like, or just lean the camera down so the person can see that you're right. Like, again, there are options. That's the other part. But I think also this goes back to conformity, right? Which I think also is a fear for a lot of people on public speaking, which is people who want to conform have a tendency to be so afraid of what the audience is going to think initially, or that I'm not, like, if the speaker before me comes out and is very just serious, I'm definitely going to be a different level of energy.
Yeah.
And if I'm trying to be that person because I think that's the tone of the room, I'm going to do them a disservice and me a disservice because I'm going to come out and be not me. That doesn't mean it was right, even if it worked with the group before me. And I think that's part of it too, is people have this assumption of I'm supposed to be a specific thing, like going back to I have to be as polished as my edited projects. And it's like, people actually love the human factor of who you are. They don't expect you to be perfect in person. As a matter of fact, the other thing that happens is in a room, stuff happens, right? Like somebody drops their phone, people do something, somebody coughs, somebody chokes. You have a moment where you have to, like, you can't just pretend that none of that's happening and be perfectly polished through it, because then you're not experiencing this shared experience with the people who are there. It's not all one thing. Part of it is going back to what you said about different levels, knowing when to apply certain levels and knowing what part is like, this is my polished part where I have prepared and I know this part down pat, but I still got to engage with the audience and meet them where they're at.
That bit of rawness, that bit of unpolishedness is so critical now because we're living in the age of AI, because there are AI generated videos with people that look polished and perfect. And so I've started doing this weird thing. By the way, I'm experimenting with this, but I leave little imperfections in my videos now. So sometimes my hair is not going to be perfect. It's going to have like a flyaway or this. And sometimes it's by accident, right? But I leave it in. Sometimes maybe my mascara might be a little smudged and I leave it in. Very recently, because we had a heat wave in France and I didn't have the AC on because I didn't want it to interfere with my mic, I was just sweating when I was recording my videos. And one of the videos, you see beads of sweat on my nose. You see like a sweat drop just kind of making its way down my face. And I asked my editor, should we do something about it? He said, Nausheen, I can't do anything about it. Either we don't do this video or...
Yeah, we have to redo it or yeah.
And I said, all right, let's do it. Let's just publish it. And I got comfortable with it because I do want people to know I'm not AI.
Well, that's also part of the problem. It's very interesting when you go live or do interactive things. I'm always stunned by the number of people who will ask, is this AI?
Yes.
Especially if you're just talking, maybe it's stream of consciousness because you and I both talk in a public setting quite a bit. But like if you go on a run where you're comfortable and you're talking, I'm always shocked because all of a sudden people start asking, is this AI? Was it pre-recorded? And I'm like, I'm standing right here responding to your questions. How could it be AI? But they don't know. And technology is growing in such a way. And I think there's such a level of apprehension and mistrust because I think a lot of people have been duped by something that they thought was a real person or a real post that turned out to be AI. How are you coaching people different? Are you asking some of your clients or encouraging them to have more natural moments because of that?
Oh gosh, AI is completely infiltrating the world of communication. And some of the ways are excellent, some of the ways not so much. When my clients are working on a keynote, for example, I tell them, please don't just add a prompt that says, I have a speech on this topic. Could you write my speech for me? No, you don't want the AI to come up with the ideas because it will sound just good enough and it will be mediocre.
Right.
What you want is to have your own ideas, to put in your ideas into the LLM and ask it, I have an audience of this, so give it information on your audience, give it information on the topic, give it information on what the audience might expect. Then give it your ideas and ask it, do you feel that these ideas map onto audience expectations? Do they exceed them? Will this be a good talk if I structure it this way? And work with it really as your ideation partner. When you are creating your slides, when you're working on your flow, let's say that you're missing a joke. You want to add a joke in. Don't say, I want to add a joke into my presentation. Can you tell me? Ask it, I want there to be a joke here, something to do with shoes, because I'm talking about shoes, and something to do with maybe people in the street. Can you come up with some ideas on this? So you're the person who the ideas originate from, and the AI helps you refine them. The AI helps you evaluate them. And that's how you work with it as a partner. And then the finished product is so much more you, so much more impactful, and yet you are still using AI to help you communicate better. Exactly the same with delivery. There are some great AI tools now that can measure your pacing, that can tell you if you made eye contact or not, that can tell you how many filler words you used. And that's great because it's in essence giving you data that you wouldn't have otherwise. It's helping you see things objectively. And that's a great use of AI for communication. So there are some great use cases, but you can't just be heavy-handed. You can't just say, let me just create my talk with AI, it'll be good enough.
Yeah, it's such a dangerous thing too because it's not you. And it becomes very, even if you don't intend it to be, it becomes very flat in a sense, right? And AI is a great ideation tool. It's a great refinement tool. It's not a great initiation tool. It's not a great creative space. And I think I think sometimes people are misusing it in that way. I've heard you say that you kind of had all of your skills and you were kind of going about the problem in a myriad of ways and circling around a problem. And you had all these other skills and you were finding all these spaces. What brought you to this part of your life, being a coach in this way?
This is my third career.
Right.
I started off in the Fortune 500 world at Procter & Gamble doing marketing and PR, which was great for the time. But then I had a period where I just didn't feel me. I didn't feel like this is what I really wanted to do. And it was really tough because P&G is the kind of company you could retire from. They take care of you. You have a career path mapped out for you. But all of that seemed a little too scary for me. It seemed like, no, this is not it. This is not it. I need to do more exploration. I just didn't know what I wanted to explore. So I pivoted to first just traveling aimlessly.
Brave.
Doing.
No, I want people to hear that part because I don't want to interrupt because this is fascinating, but I do want people to realize how brave that is because you were in a place where you could just kind of exist and coast along, but then we wouldn't know the beauty that is you now. So keep going, but I want people to hear how brave that is because that's not the average, and I want people to understand sometimes you have to take the big, bold step.
And I will say, being in my 20s helped. The older you get, the more you overthink things, the more risk averse you become.
And the more responsibilities or things that you already have accumulated that you're trying to maintain or hold on to. So I do understand. I'm not just telling everybody to just jump ship. That is not what I said. Please don't send me the nasty messages afterwards.
Yeah.
But it is brave and it is bold and it is life affirming in a very beautiful way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So then I spent some time just traveling aimlessly, exploring different aspects of my skill set, got into improv, got into stand-up comedy, started writing for and acting in a crappy little late night TV segment, explored all these things, and eventually meandered into filmmaking. Went to film school in New York and essentially became a commercial filmmaker, which was great for a while. I never felt it though.
Okay.
Never felt like I was a filmmaker.
You did it,
yeah,
but it didn't feel like you.
No.
You said, okay.
No. So I would create all these commercials, work on all these campaigns, and then come back feeling a little unfulfilled. There was one part of the job I loved: working with the talent, especially the non-professional talent, which is a nice way of saying people that are just not used to being on camera.
Yeah, it's a nice way of like saying the CEOs, the leaders, the people who do really important jobs that are not prone to being on camera. And in the old days, they didn't have to be.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you almost have to be. So if you don't have media training, if you don't have a speaking coach, you might want to call you, right? Because the world has changed in that way.
Yeah. So very often I would be working with these CEOs, these founders, to create these corporate documentaries to help them tell their story. Except when they spoke on camera, they would become these pale robotic versions of themselves. They would be like the person you showed us a little while ago. You're just reading off of a script and you're devoid of all emotion and you just aren't doing justice to your story, to your company. And that's where I thrived. I started coaching them without realizing I was coaching them, because my job as the director was to get the best performance out of them. So now I'm coaching them on, this is where you can be a bit more expressive. Feel the words. You're telling me about your story of how you started. Go back to that moment. See if you can relive it. Show me how unsure you were. Show me the joy of getting that first client, that first investor. And that piece of it is what I took and then took into a full-blown public speaking coaching business, because there was a point when I realized I just got to go after what I really love. And the thing I loved was public speaking. I had had a lifelong affair with public speaking at that point. I just never realized I could create a career out of it. I thought, well, let me see how, if I put some stuff out there. I started with LinkedIn, for example, where I started putting little lessons on public speaking. I started creating these videos from my living room with natural lighting, with the camera that I had as a behind the scenes camera from the film set, just really basic stuff. Of course, I knew the basics of it because I came from that world, so it wasn't shitty in terms of quality.
But it wasn't perfect.
No, it wasn't.
And I think that people get afraid because they don't do stuff because they're afraid because they won't put it out unless they think it's perfect. And the reality is there's no such thing as perfect, because having worked in that area, you can always do something else. There's always something in every frame where you're like, oh, we could have, right? So, but you just were like, I'm going to do this.
I'm going to do this. I got to do this. This was when I was about 37, 38. So, you know, you have the in French we call it the crisis of the 40s, la crise de la quarantaine, where you're like, come on, it's now or never.
Right.
So I started creating these videos on things I had learned doing public speaking, things I'd learned working with founders on camera. And they started getting traction. People were noticing them. LinkedIn noticed them and reached out to me and said, wow, these are really cool. Can you create short courses for us based on your public speaking lessons? I started teaching for them. I started creating these LinkedIn learning courses. I started getting invites for fantastic podcasts like this. I started going and speaking on events, on panels. And so I started getting recognition for this thing that I was already an expert in, but I had just been invisible. I hadn't talked about it. The moment I started talking about it, the audience, the community, the market, so to speak, responded positively. And I realized I had gained a skill set, in a way by accident, because it was my love affair with public speaking. Right. I didn't really go to school for it. I didn't take a course for it. I just developed the skill set over time because I loved it, but it was something people wanted.
Right. It's powerful.
It was something that they lacked. It had never occurred to me till that time. And so that's how I got into public speaking coaching, just looking at how people were naturally reacting to the lessons that I was sharing.
Okay, so if you want to be a public speaker, if someone's at home saying, I love interacting, or I think I can do that,
Yes.
or wants to do a TED talk, wants to be in these spaces, where would you suggest for people to start?
3 very simple steps. The first step is understand what you want to be known for. I have so many people coming to me and saying, Nausheen, I want to do a TEDx talk. And I ask them, well, what will the talk be on? They say, something to do with AI and workflows. And I say, what? Like, tell me an exact topic. Tell me what you want to be known as an expert in. Do that bit of work so that you can really pinpoint the one thing that people can know you for. So that's step 1. Step 2 is first start with the lower stakes opportunities. Go to some events that don't require a lot of stress. For example, open mic events are a really great way to just get out there in front of a live audience, practice telling a story or two, get used to the idea of all eyes on you, where you can perform, you can speak to the audience without feeling nervous. Maybe volunteer for some more presentations at work. Just go for lower stakes opportunities where you can practice your skill set, where you know, what is it that I'm doing well? What can I do better? And then step 3 is creating an intentional plan. It's never just about one stage or one talk. I always ask people, what's the goal here? Is it that you want to become a thought leader in your industry? Or is it that you want to become a paid speaker? The 2 paths are not exactly the same. So understand your goal and then create an intentional action plan that leads you there. If it's thought leadership, understand and shortlist the top 15 to 20 events in your industry that you can apply for as a speaker. And at this point, you'd ideally have done steps 1 and 2, which means you'd ideally know exactly how to pitch your topic, your expertise, and you would ideally have done a few lower stakes speaking opportunities so that you're going in armed with that, where you're saying, this is not my first event.
Right.
I have done events, I've done podcasts on this topic. Now I would like to speak at your event. And that is an action plan, which means you go and you pitch. Sometimes you get a yes, sometimes you get a no, sometimes you get silence. It's like a job interview where you're applying for a job, you're applying for events, you're applying for higher tier podcasts. And so that is a longer term plan. Most people give up. Somewhere around step 2 and 3, they give up because you have this dream, but then you realize, oh, I got to work for it?
Yeah, it's work.
You didn't tell me that.
Here's what I always tell people. There's nothing in this world that's not going to require you to work. If you love it, the work doesn't feel the same as doing the thing you hate. And that's part of this, is like understand what brings you to life, because if you're going to spend all day working on something. If you want to be successful, it might as well be something that you love that brings you to life. There's no surprise that your lifelong love of public speaking fit perfect into becoming the public speaking coach. And now you're giving your gift and sharing what you want, because now the work you do is in something you love, and we get to watch you light up as you do it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a strange question, because there's what I call maybe the most useless question that I always think generally somehow disqualifies people from great moments in their life, which is the question of what do you do? And you have a great reaction to this. How do you advise people when someone comes up to you and says, what do you do?
It depends on whether you're highlighting a problem that you solve or whether you just want to do a straight up intro but make it a little interesting. So you have a little bit of a choice there. Also, it depends on the setting. Let's say someone's asking you in a podcast, you have a little bit more time to answer. Someone's asking you at a networking event, you don't want to go into like a 3-minute spiel on what you do. Problem solution is a great way of introducing yourself if You want to highlight that you solve a problem. So for example, you know those people that do presentations, but they feel very nervous before they walk into a presentation, or they walk out of it thinking, I could have said that better. That's where I come in. I'm a speaking coach. I help people become confident, impactful communicators in any room. So now I've given you the problem, and I've shown that I'm the solution to this problem. Simple, easy, works really well for entrepreneurs, founders, people that solve a problem. Let's say you're in a corporate role. You are solving a problem, but maybe that's not the core of what you want to say. Maybe you want to introduce a very specific role. Do that intro, but then add something interesting that gets people to ask you the next question. So, for example, I didn't really start off in sales. I did door-to-door selling of beauty products for 3 years, but then I got into this magnificent sales company, and now I've sold hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of products. And so that's what I do now as executive sales manager, right? So I'm giving you a little bit. I'm giving you something that you can ask me about. I'm not just leaving you with a flat intro. It's always a choice, and it's up to you to understand what the moment expects, and then, if you can, over-deliver.
So I heard you say one time that we're basically all storytellers. And as somebody who works in storytelling, I think maybe a wise friend of yours said something, we're always telling the stories we tell ourselves. Is something like that?
We are the stories we tell ourselves.
Okay, and talk to me about being a storyteller and the stories we tell ourselves and the stories that maybe people need to shift.
First of all, I love that you asked about storytelling, because storytelling is such a massively underutilized skill in business. People think, stories are for Hollywood. Right. Stories are for storybooks.
Or for a quick sale, right?
Or for a quick sale. But
Right.
stories don't belong in serious presentations. Oh my God, so wrong.
Yeah.
We are hardwired to tune into stories. There was a time when we were all living in caves when being able to understand and act on a story meant the difference between life and death. You had someone come running towards you out of breath. Oh, don't go there. Big bear over there. Run. If you understood the story and if you were able to act on it, you survived.
And before we had written words, the story was the way we passed on history and communication and our existence to the next generation. This is hardwired into us.
Hardwired. So anytime that someone starts telling a story, we can't help it. The lizard part of our brains is like, I gotta tune in. This could be important. This could mean survival. That's why it's such a massively underutilized skill, because A, people either don't tell stories, or B, they tell boring stories where you tune in for the first 5 seconds, 15 seconds, and then it goes nowhere because it's more and more background, and that there isn't a point, or there's too much action, or there just isn't a narrative that is coherent throughout the story. So the solution to that is really understanding a very simple mental framework that you can follow along as you're telling the story. And I call this the story cart.
Okay.
So context, actions, result, takeaway. Lead in with the context, tell us the actions that you took, tell us what happened as a result, and then give us a key takeaway. And I'm telling you this story because, or the thing I walked away with was. And now you've just packaged the whole experience. You've given us a structured story, even if you were improvising.
Can you speak about the danger, right? Like there is this thing of waiting in our lives. Of like waiting, we talked about it briefly, but about like waiting for it to be perfect or waiting for you to be ready. As a speaker, how do you look at that?
Waiting for the perfect opportunity, waiting to feel confident. I had this client who was the founder of a recruitment company, and she had just had a bit of a traumatic experience with the podcast where she'd gone on the podcast. It was her very first one. And she was so nervous that she'd gone completely blank. She ended up being able to fumble her way through it, but later on she felt so embarrassed that she actually emailed the host and said, could you please not release that podcast? She just felt extremely embarrassed and felt traumatized because she had failed herself. She felt that she couldn't rise to that pressure. And so when she came to me, she said, Nausheen, I have a panel booked at a major event in my industry, and I want to be perfect before I go on. I want to be so confident because I'm just coming off of this incident and I never ever want it to happen again. Part of the work was getting her to overcome that trauma.
Right.
To understand that we can build the skill set where you will not let yourself down in the future. It was just lack of skills. That's it. You can learn them.
Right, but you don't have to be perfect.
And part of it was telling her that you don't have to be perfect. You shouldn't be perfect, and you will never be perfect.
Right.
So the more you wait, the less action you're taking. That's the equation. That's the math. If you can just go on that next stage, if you can go on that next podcast, do the scary thing, learn from it, understand what are the things I did well, where can I improve, use that as data for next time. Now you're on this positive feedback loop. Now you're on this positive cycle of growth. The next one will have to be better. Even if it's better by 1%, it's still better. And so you're taking imperfect action and you're learning. You're not just saying, I'm just going to go do it. But you're learning from each and every iteration and then improving for next time.
In this area, what's one question you wish people would ask you that people don't, that you think more people should?
Who am I? People very rarely realize that they can mold and shape the identity that they present. And we talked about this a little earlier. But very few people stop to ask, well, who am I? And what do I want to present to the world? We contain multitudes, Walt Whitman. Which means that for sure we have many, 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 many aspects to us. And in a one-on-one conversation with our friends, of course, different aspects should come out. But when you are gearing up to be a thought leader in your industry, when you want to be known for that one thing, and that's important because you want people to associate you with that one thing. A lot of people fight that because they say, Nausheen, I also want to talk about this other thing. I am also good at this. I also want to bring this in. Or they do have an area of expertise, but it's way too broad. AI and project workflows. All right, there's so much you can do there.
And it's changing all the time.
And how can you be known as an expert in that if it's just way too broad? So asking yourself at the beginning, who am I to this audience that I want to address? I very intentionally assumed this identity of a public speaking coach. Of course, to my friends, to my family, I'm more things than that. I do improv, for example, just for fun. To my improv friends, I'm not a public speaking coach. I'm just their improv buddy. So I'm allowed to contain multitudes, for sure. I have a rich life, a multifaceted life. But will I go and talk about 20 different things on stage? Maybe not. Because why would I want to dilute that? Why would I want the audience to get confused? People like simplicity. Our brains like simplicity. Our brains, I mean, this is good and bad, right? Because it also leads to stereotyping. Our brains want to label people. We feel great when we can put a nice little label on someone, right? And say, oh, extrovert, oh, immigrant, oh, founder, oh, rich person. Give them the label that you want for yourself. Control that identity. Understand, who am I? Who do I want to be for this audience?
Interesting. I'm thinking about, like, if there was a space, right? Obviously you have to define what you really want to be because people don't know when they come to you, right? So there's great power in identifying. What is the space in which you take this spot when you're like, okay, I am now going to define this shape and this is going to be my area of expertise? For example, you became a public speaking coach. You chose at one point confidence was a big key factor. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you were like, I'm going to define confidence and talk about this because it is a great component that a lot of people are lacking. And so that's how a good example, I think, of how people can kind of structure it, right? This was a very specific piece of what you wanted to present and who you wanted the world to identify you as, right?
Yeah, and you get that data. Don't just come up with it by yourself, and you don't have to. Get it from the audience. When I started posting on LinkedIn, I posted about everything. I posted about the last book I'd read. I posted about my opinions on topics that I was interested in. And I posted about public speaking. So feel it out. Understand from the audience what they respond to more, what they're interested in more, where the gap is. That's where you can fill that gap. So you don't need to come up with it in isolation. You don't even need to come up with it with an LLM. Really, just test it. First, build an audience anywhere on any platform of your choice, because that's what's going to give you that data. That's what's going to help you understand what is the most impactful, most effective, most lucrative aspect of your expertise that you can shape into thought leadership.
Okay, this is going to be a slightly strange question, but what is a part of your journey that maybe at one point felt like awkwardness or shame that turned into purpose?
This is an interesting question because I don't feel shame.
Beautiful.
I have a story here.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
So because I'm adopted, as I told you, my biological father loves public speaking.
Okay.
This is the guy I didn't grow up with.
Right.
No inspiration there, no role model.
Right.
He loves public speaking. He can get up in front of an audience and he thrives on that.
Hold on. At what point did you realize this? Like, when did you realize? Okay, because I'm fascinated by this because I have kids that I adopted, and there's this gap, right? Because you don't grow up with that person.
Yeah.
So when you find this overlap, it's fascinating, but it's also like it's a very different thing because it's a choice. So tell me about this.
Yeah, it was bizarre. It was surreal. I just realized it a few years ago, and I was making this comparison, and I realized, wow, he doesn't feel inhibited. He gets energy from the crowd. He wants and thrives in the limelight. And I feel similarly. And I looked a little deeper into it. And of course, I haven't done a study on my DNA and his DNA. But supposedly, there's a theory that there are certain genes that encourage inhibition and certain genes that don't. So somehow, if you skip that gene that causes that inhibition, potentially you're just not going to feel inhibited.
Right.
And I've always struggled with this. Actually, it's a great point because I've struggled with this concept of shame because the world tells you, especially as a young girl, a young brown girl growing up in a developing country, you get told to feel shame. And I always was like, what is this shame? I don't feel it. What's going on?
Why are you supposed to carry it for somebody else's
well, yes, that too.
predisposed position, right?
That too.
Yeah. Like, shame is a weird one for me too, because I grew up as a performer, so I did things that other people were like, aren't you ashamed to do that joke? Or aren't you ashamed to go I'm like, no, it was funny, right? Like, it brought a lot of other people peace, right? I don't have the same relationship with shame that a lot of other people do, especially in certain areas, which is a beautiful gift. It also makes you uniquely aware sometimes of watching other people
Yes.
deal with this or struggle, or when people try to impose it on you, like, you should be ashamed. And I'm like, no, there are things in life where you might have repercussions, you might have regrets, you might have moments where you're like, oh, I would have done that different, right? But I don't know why I should inherently have shame.
Yeah.
Like, why? I don't know why shame. First of all, I find shame to be largely a useless emotion because it doesn't make any progress for you, and it doesn't empower you in any way. And then the other part is we rarely ask. Like, for example, you just mentioned being a young brown girl, right? It's not like you chose that. So I don't know why you should have any shame about it, right? It's also not something that should be shameful. So that's somebody else's issue. So even if someone tries to impose it on you, it's like, that's a very strange thing. Or the things you don't know, because, like, look, there are mistakes that every kid makes. But until you learn some of these things, they're not shame. It's not like you intentionally set out to do something negative or destructive or hurtful. It's like, shame is a very interesting thing because we almost impose it on each other.
Yes.
And I find that culturally to be such a strange place to stand and to exist, because it's like, culturally speaking, in different parts of the world, things that are shameful are totally normal in other places.
Yeah.
And that's also part of it, is shame is largely cultural.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not, and sometimes you need to just stop and ask, like, is that cultural thing, like, is that relevant, right? Because so much of the shame you just mentioned is unnecessary.
Yes, completely unnecessary. And it has negative repercussions on the person's self-esteem and their confidence.
And the grander society as a whole, because that's the other part that we never acknowledge, is by applying that shame, we're also restricting the growth of exactly what we say we supposedly want in the society. So it's like, it's not benefiting anyone. I'm not sure why we're perpetuating this. So when it's not really your style, you get a different view on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm fascinated as you look at this, right? How do you reconcile that? How do you balance that? How do you shape it in your world?
The lack of shame?
No, like, well, maybe, yeah. Like, do you see it as a superpower? Do you see it as like a weight you don't carry? Do you want to give it to other people?
Yes. Yeah. I really like helping my clients realize that half the stuff that they worry about, that they're embarrassed about, does not matter. It only matters to them.
Right.
Very often, they'll share a video of themselves, for example, and say, Nausheen, did you notice how bad I was? Did you notice how at this point I hesitated? Did you notice I have so many filler words? And I say, did you notice how composed you were at the beginning? Did you notice you remembered to tell the story that we worked on? Did you notice people laughed at that joke that you made? And they say, oh, I mean, yeah, but... And I say, no, wait. You've got to live and experience and take ownership of the stuff that you did well. Not just look at, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I'm just not good enough. I'm not good enough. And so, yeah, I really want to help them, and I help them shape that story in their heads that we were talking about, the story they're telling themselves, instead of thinking, oh, I just didn't do well again. I made that mistake again. Oh no, I'm just not learning. Instead of that story, you shift the story and you think, oh yeah, I did that one thing this time that I didn't do before. Oh, I managed to hit that beat that I didn't do before. Oh, the audience gave me this reaction that they hadn't before. There's progress. And so, yeah, I really want to help them get out of their heads, essentially.
There's a part of this earlier where you mentioned shooting the video and having the sweat. And someone asked you, do you want to put that out? Because that's a perfect example of where shame pops in, right? That's kind of an erroneous version of this. And I want people to think of it this way, because every single human being sweats, right? I don't know why we should be embarrassed of it, right? Like people are like, and the focus to just go through, like, I don't have AC right now. I'm doing this thing. Yes, I am sweating. I'm a human being, right? Like there's nothing shameful about it. And yet people even check with you, like, are you sure you want to put this out? And it's like, you're, even with good intention, you're almost imposing the thought that I should have shame. And the thought about it is like, why isn't it just the opposite of like, look, watch me power through this.
Yeah.
Watch me do the thing that other people do all the time. Like, listen, I run hot to begin with. Like, I look like a snowman in the middle of summer sometimes. It's just the nature of things. Like, own it. I run hot. I tell people all the time. So it's like, it just is what it is. Why is that shameful, or why is it something we should hide? And I think a big part of learning to love yourself and understanding that you're worthy of sharing your knowledge is understanding that you don't have to presuppose that someone else is better or that other people are somehow more complete than you are, and that you're broken.
Yeah. When I first did my first TEDx talk, I kind of poured my heart and poured my story into it. I talked about the end of my first marriage. I talked about how I reevaluated my whole world. I talked about being an outcast for a while. And I had people come up later and tell me, wow, Nausheen, that was so personal. We felt embarrassed on your behalf, but it was so empowering. We didn't realize someone could get up on stage and be so vulnerable and tell us these things that they learned in this painful life journey. And I said, yeah, I wanted all of you to feel that.
Yeah. See, to me, I love all that. Even as you were saying that, I was like, I'm fascinated, right? Because to me, that's where the growth happens. That's where the detail happens. That's where the character's built. Mm-hmm. And I think so often we just want to see, especially now, a lot of times with social media, everybody wants to show you the outcome.
Yeah.
Something had to be built for me to be the person I am today. It's like when someone asks me about bad experiences in my life, I look at them with a level of gratitude that might sound strange to others. I think you get this is, I look at those because I think to myself, they help make me this.
Yeah.
And my job is to continue to build this and continue and grow. I don't claim to be perfect anyway. Listen, I make plenty of mistakes. I'm still navigating all of that. And like, I will screw up plenty, so please don't judge me too hard. But you can judge me all you want because I'm not going to take shame for the fact that I am imperfect. Part of my perfection is my imperfection. Mm-hmm. It's what is honest and truthful. Okay. I ask people this question, so this is really fascinating now that you said all of that, which is, what are the 3 words that describe you, Nausheen?
Rebel's got to be the first one, which is so cliched, but it's so true.
Oh, I love that. And you know what? No one has said that. Of people I've asked.
Because you feel cringe.
Why?
Calling yourself a rebel. It's like,
oh no. Right. Like
that's true. We were talking about shame, so there's no cringe. I mean, I did own it.
Yeah, but I love that. Speak for a moment on the cringe aspect of that. Because when you say a rebel, what's the cringe part? Because it's a real feeling.
Yeah, it's the 90s kid who was fed this diet of MTV and
rebel against society. Yeah.
Which I loved. I'm going to own that. Like that was my thing. I did grow up with all this rock and roll. I did grow up with this feeling of, like I need to rebel against something. I need to first understand what the heck all these social standards are. And I, grew up in a very regimented, very disciplined, very conservative environment that I tried to escape as quickly as I possibly could because I can't survive there.
Right.
So a large part of that was rebelling. I pretty much rebelled against everything. I've rebelled against cultural norms that I grew up in. I've rebelled against traditional family structures. I'm in my 40s, no kids. I've rebelled against what professional people should look like. I mean, I look like this, and I coach and train leaders at Google, NASA, Amazon, the UN, LinkedIn, Disney, SAP, ServiceNow. And I challenge people's perceptions of what professional should look like. I love it. So I love that rebellion.
Do you see the way my face is lighting up through this? Yeah. Right, which is probably not the reaction you get from everybody. Part of the beauty that you're sharing with the world is this, right? There's an element where there's a whole bunch of people waiting to be free.
Yeah.
Who are too afraid to free themselves or have never been allowed. So when you say you're not supposed to look like this, I think to myself, this is exactly what you're supposed to look like. So I want you to hear this from someone who's just getting to know you. The Nausheen that I've gotten to interact with, and even the planning of this and your willingness to travel and do all these things is beautiful.
Thank you.
So I love the rebel. Give me 2 more words.
Resilient. Mm-hmm. That's got to be up there. I lost my dad when I was 10. Mm-hmm. I found out that I was adopted when I was 18. Lost my mom when I was 29. Mm-hmm. It happens when your parents adopt you later in life. They pass away. So I had to be resilient through all of that. I pride myself on being the eternal optimist because that's the only way I know how to live.
Me too.
Yeah, can't start seeing the darkness and everything. It just goes downhill from
No,
there.
there's too much that if you let yourself sit in that, it will get in the way of all the other beautiful things you want to do. Doesn't mean you don't feel it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you haven't faced it. It just means you choose to find the light. You choose to be the lighthouse in the dark, which I think is something you do very beautifully. I'm sorry my deepest condolences. I'm sorry for their loss, but I will tell you, I will say this as a dad, there is this beautiful gift that I guarantee you that they are very proud of because you are passing gifts to other people.
Thank you.
Okay.
I hope so.
Yes.
I don't believe in a heaven, but I do believe that if it existed, I think they would be proud of me.
Well, here's what I'll say. There's no question there's lots of reasons to be. Okay, give me one more.
Questioner.
Ooh, I like that.
Always questioned things since I was a kid. And I'm really I'm giving you the ones that have stayed with me for a long time, right? Like the ones that started when I was really young. And part of that questioning was, again, like, why am I supposed to dress differently if I'm a woman? Why am I supposed to conform to this idea of, okay, be quiet. Keep your opinions to yourself. Don't be polarizing. Don't be too loud. Don't piss people off. I've always questioned, why is it that I'm supposed to have specific beliefs? Why am I supposed to just believe in something just because everyone around me believes in something? That doesn't mean it makes it true. So I've always questioned things. I don't always have the answers, but I do like questioning.
I love that, though, because as somebody who's prone to curiosity, if you don't question, you can't find answers. And I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of this is you're supposed to question. I've also realized that the most knowledgeable people are not usually afraid of questions. They embrace them. And the fact that we don't always have every answer. Even I think it was interesting because when you said the thing about like if there is a heaven, right? You didn't say universally, absolutely not. You say, I don't believe in one. If there is, here's the, right? Like it's the expansive questioning portion of like, I'm open to the reality that there are things beyond my knowledge, right? But it also gives you the power of reaching to something different.
I like that.
Yeah. I love the word you picked. Okay. What is the legacy that you want the people in your life to take from you?
Oh, this one's really simple. I want people to feel that I empowered them to have a voice. And I already see it, which is something I don't use the word blessed very often, but I feel incredibly blessed when I see my clients find their voice, start telling their story, start sharing their story. And it's because of the work that we did. If I hadn't come into their lives or if they hadn't sought me out, they may still be in the shadows. And so that's what I want. That's what I want people to remember me by. Nausheen helped me find my voice.
Yeah, that's the thing, the light that you guide people to is to find their voice. And I think that, like, I watched you just light up in that. That's what I want. Largely, this show was started for, was I want people to watch people light up and find the thing that they love and then see what it means to share it. Because it does us no good to keep our light bottled up inside of us. I love so much of this. Thank you, Nausheen. I have so many, like again, the curious part of me could ask you a million more questions. Thank you for showing people an insight. Tell people where they can find you when they're ready for a speaking coach.
Speaking.coach.
Okay.
It's a simple URL, hopefully easy to remember, speaking.coach. You can go there. There are lots of free resources for people. There's a newsletter they can sign up for. There is a free course on speaking fearlessly where you get little nuggets from me for a few days where I guide you through building your confidence, through understanding how to structure your message under pressure in a clear, concise way. And I guide you through understanding your voice, your energy, your body language. So all of that is for free. You can get the basics, the foundations of what I teach just by going on speaking.coach. So that's where people should go.
I'm so thankful that you came. Thank you for sharing all of your beauty, your light, and your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was excellent. This was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.